And for your top story this hour, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for urgent dialogue between the United States and Iran to prevent a crisis with devastating consequences. His remarks come amid escalating tensions between both countries, with US President Donald Trump warning Iran to strike a nuclear deal or face far worse consequences. Trump urged Iran to negotiate a fair deal on nuclear weapons, emphasizing the importance of coming to the table before the time runs out. Meanwhile, Iranian officials have warned of retaliation against the US and its allies if military action is taken. Tensions have risen as a US naval force led by the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln heads toward the region. Let's listen to what the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres had to say.
It's important that there is a dialogue allowing for an agreement in relation, namely, to the nuclear question, and that we can avoid a crisis that could have devastating consequences in the region.
We are now being joined by Peter Baum, who in London, who is an editor of Weekly Blitz. Thank you so much for joining us here on NewsX World today. What does the UN Secretary General's call for new talks between the US and Iran reveal about the risks the world faces in diplomacy fails?
Good day, Ali. Thanks for having me on. Yes, I think this statement by Antonio Guterres, was to be expected. That's his role. But increasingly, he is becoming an irrelevant bureaucrat on the world stage. I don't think there's been, I think there's just been one meeting of the UN Security Council about the Iranian protests and the thousands killed. And increasingly, this man is being ignored. I think Trump has only had one meeting with him since Trump's been in office. And I don't know what the feeling is in South Asia, although I can guess. But in Europe, the UN Secretary General is seen as just a puppet of the United Nations, which is increasingly becoming the theatre of the absurd. One would expect for him to make a statement like that, but he's only stating the obvious. And in fact, dialogue is going on. We've just heard overnight that Trump has said he's speaking to the Iranians. We know that Qatar, Turkey, Oman, Saudi and the United Arab Emirates are trying to act as mediators and are having dialogue with the Iranians. We know that Russia is. Overnight, in fact, before the UN Secretary General made that statement, an Iranian plane, government plane, landed in Moscow. So really his comments are just, I guess, what one would expect from someone, but no one is really paying attention to this man as an individual, and the United Nations is being bypassed, and only the interested actors are having a say in what's going on with the potential conflict that's going to happen in Iran.
What is urgent right now? What is he trying to alert people to prevent?
Well, given his role, one would expect nothing less from this man. But he is being increasingly isolated because he has no power, and the United Nations is being bypassed. Obviously, he's alerted. Everyone knows what the problems would be, what the potential disaster would be of a major conflict in Iran. Trump has actually been the one saying, look, come to the table. This is what I want from you Iranians. And it's the Iranians who are sticking their feet firmly on the ground and saying, no, we will not compromise on these issues. As I understand it, Trump wants Iran to completely stop the nuclear missile program and to stop arming the proxies and to cut down on the number of ballistic missiles they have in their armory. They also want, they've given, as I understand it, they will allow safe passage to the senior members of the Iranian regime, some of whom have already left to go to Moscow, as I understand it, and I think some of the regime's diplomats abroad have asked for safe haven in places like France and Switzerland. So this dialogue is ongoing. The UN Secretary General has just stated the obvious, but he's being bypassed. Not one of the nations involved in this potential conflict is looking to Guterres for input.
Can Iran and the United States find common ground for meaningful dialogue if Tehran insists negotiations?
Well, of course, the answer is one lives in hope. But given the build-up of the American military capabilities in the region, it seems destined to end in some kind of conflict. Now, a couple of things have happened recently. 2 Iranian ships have been sunk in the Caspian Sea. One 2 weeks ago, which received very little attention. It was an arms-carrying ship to Russia, the Rona, and yesterday the Caspian Shiva, an Iranian-registered ship, was also sunk in the Caspian Sea, also carrying arms to Russia, we think. Overnight, there's been a drone attack on the Iranian prosecutor's house. The Iranians have come up and said he survived the assassination attempt, although we've yet to see him in public. So given all that, plus the American military build-up, plus the slaughter of Iranians on the streets, it's highly unlikely, sitting here now, that there seems that a political compromise can be reached, although Trump would prefer that on his terms, which at the moment seem to be unacceptable to the Iranians, although they are being pressured, as we spoke about yesterday, by the Turks especially, who don't want to see hundreds of thousands of Iranians swarm into Turkey, being pressured by Oman, by Saudi now, by the United Arab Emirates and by Qatar to come to some compromise, which, as I say, at the moment, the Iranians don't seem to want to do.
Thank you, Peter. Don't go too far, as we will come back to you in just a moment.